Hello everyone. Have you ever heard of the Piano Concerto by Ligeti? It is an amazing work and probably one of the most difficult and complex music that I know. It is hard not only for the performers, but also for the listeners to enjoy because of the mass of the sound. Well, don't be afraid. I will try to review all the essential points and the secrets of the work that could be helpful for the understanding the music. But first of all, I would like to tell you briefly about the composer. So Georg Ligeti was a Hungarian composer, and his family was Jewish, and he had some hard time during the World War II, and he had to stop his musical training, and sadly he's lost his father and brother. In the middle 50s, there was a revolution in Hungary, and his creative activities and the access to Western music was restricted by the communist government. So he had some tragedies and suffering in his life, and sometimes you feel his anger or the dramatic devastation in his music. His music is often innovative or intellectual, breaking the rules or the traditions of so-called authentic classical music. But he succeeded in creating the fantastic sound universe and opened a new horizon in modern music. His piano concerto has 5 movements and was composed in the 1980s. The interesting thing is that Ligeti composed a cycle of piano etudes about the same time, and he took some of the systems, characteristics, or even the melodies of etudes in the concerto. So it could be considered a compilation of his musical explorations. Globally speaking, it is a chamber music type of concerto, and it seems to me that Ligeti divided the entire ensemble into 3 groups, so strings, winds, and percussions, including the piano, not only in the way of writing a score, but also musically. So each group creates own rhythmic pulsation or the musical direction, and they come closer or separate or sometimes come together. The 5 movements are rather related to each other by its motifs, but the entire work has a very original structure. So let's take a look, starting with the first movement. It opens with the rhythmic ensembles by piano, 4 tom-toms, and pizzicato strings. I show you the beginning of the piano parts using the metronome. Perhaps you noticed that something was wrong with the rhythm. Actually, I played it as it's written in the score. The time signature is 12/8 here, so the pulse should be in 4, pa 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 pa. But he puts accents between the beats and breaks the law of inertia. In addition to that, the strings play a different rhythm, which adds the complexity to the music. And this is called polyrhythm. It is often found in Central African music or in the Indonesian gamelan music that influenced Ligeti in early 80s. Now, I show you some of the piano parts more complicated. This is section F. And section P. Section U, which is quite tricky because the left hand comes always 1/8 note behind the right hand. That means the accent never comes on both hands together. And there's something interesting in the notation as well. The right hand has no key signature, so it plays only on white keys. And the left hand has 5 sharps, so it plays on many of black keys. So this is a bitonal, and he employed it in the etude number 1, Désordre. In this first movement, I think there are 3 principal motifs. Motif 1 is played very softly by woodwinds. I call it a happy theme because it's all made of major chords. Motif 2 is played by the horn, and this is more lyrical and expressive. Motif 3 is a joyful dance-like theme played by woodwinds and strings. So those motifs appear alternately, but unfortunately for me, the piano never plays those motifs. The first movement ends in a very charming way. The second movement starts with attacca, with a sustained long note by the contrabass, and the atmosphere completely turns dark. But this is probably the easiest movement to listen to because it's in slow tempo, and basically there's only one principal melody. This descending chromatic line is one of the Ligeti's favorite motifs, which we call lamento motif because it evokes lament. And you can find the exact same melody in etude number 6, Automne à Varsovie. And there are a few bars that are very similar. Both hands play exactly in the parallel with a huge intervals, and that makes an empty coldness. This is from the concerto. And this is from an etude. What is amazing in this movement is that Ligeti gradually adds echoes by other instruments, and so that the music grows and builds to a huge dimension. And this is the climax of the movement. In this movement, there are few moments where you get a surprise or shock by sudden disturbance of the fortissimo sound of orchestra. This is like watching a horror movie where you have a calm and slow scenery, and suddenly something scares appears. So please be prepared when you listen to this movement. I don't want you to get a heart attack. For me, the second movement is a prelude to the third because the principal theme is the same, the lamento motif, and it is developed even more in the system of the tempo fuga, meaning that the theme appears many times in different registers, different keys, and in different tempo or intervals. For example, here, So this line has a 10 16th notes in intervals, but here shorter 6 16th notes. The piano has the principal role throughout the movement, and there's not a second where the piano stops. And in general, you always hear very soft whispering by small notes, which gives the colors and the feeling of flying in the sky. There are a few moments where the piano makes a long crescendo, increasing the tension, and at the climax, puff, it suddenly becomes pianissimo. But you still hear this whispering small notes, so it makes you feel as if you'd enter in different dimension. The most difficult part of this movement for piano is in section E and K, where both hands have a series of 16th notes and each hand has accents irregularly and mostly not on the beats. I'll show you at a slow tempo. And the movement ends with a solo piano in diminuendo, and interestingly, Ligeti uses the same form and idea from the Etude number 2, chord vide. Since this is my favorite, I'd like to play the whole movement this time. Well, I wish I had an orchestra too. The fourth movement is about dialogue between instrument groups. Each group plays a small fragment motif which is then taken over by other group. But again, the rhythmic complexity makes it difficult to play together. Every single musician has to keep his concentration. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the harmonies here. When you hear this kind of modern music, you might think there's no harmony, or at least not a harmony that you would hear in classical or romantic music. But actually, modern composers also use pleasant harmonies, but in a way that is not so perceptible. For example, at measure 35, the piano plays like this. Don't you find it quite romantic? It could be like or sometimes I hear harmonies of Messiaen. There are dissonances, but somehow they are beautiful. The problem is that you don't have time to feel the beauty of each harmony in the tempo he wrote. And it doesn't have the continuity of harmony progression because of the interruption by other instrument groups. And here is an example of polychords, meaning two hands play a chord of different tonalities at the same time. At first impression, this may not sound pleasant, but you actually hear a lot of it in jazz music. For example, Ligeti chose maybe on purpose those two keys that don't match together, but you never know. Those chords could be considered pleasant in the future. I'll play the last section of this movement, which is a series of chords but in irregular rhythm. I'll count the beats with a metronome so you see clearly the rhythmic complexity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. The last movement of this concerto is for me a quick reminiscence, taking the elements from the previous movements, not exactly the same way, but quite similar. But the bad news is that the tempo is even faster than ever. Here is an example of little imitation of the fourth movement. And here's an example of the third movement. There's also a lamento motif played by the horn. And here's a series of irregular rhythmic chords in bitonality that you heard in the first movement. By the way, this is not from the previous movements, but there's a little imitation of etude number 4, fanfare. And this is from etude. Now, I'll show you my favorite part of this movement. It's quite lyrical in the right hand. While the left hand is busy with 16th notes on the black keys. It sounds quite oriental. And two come together. don't know the real intention of Ligeti, but it could suggest a mixture of two different cultures. So this concerto doesn't have grandiose ending, which you might expect in a standard piano concerto. Instead, you get quite a surprise at the end. Well, I don't want to tell you everything, but you will hear a single sound of this instrument, wood block. And this comes so suddenly and unexpectedly that you feel as if the time stopped. And it produces such amazing effect and creates a special, very special atmosphere. So that's it. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it will help you to enjoy and appreciate some modern music. And I really hope that you will get an opportunity to attend the live performance of Ligeti's piano concerto. I'm sure it will be a great experience.